Hey friends, so in 2024, I interviewed a lot of very smart and very interesting health-related business owners. And so on today's episode, I'm going to be going back over some of my favorite quotes that came from those people, and actually a few that I said myself that pat myself on the back that I really enjoyed. And I'm going to be breaking down each one of those quotes and some of the lessons learned from some of those conversations. So let's get started. All right, the first one comes from my buddy Eric Hinman, who is an incredible content creator, and he works with a ton of health brands. And he said, become so memorable and so valuable that opportunities start to come to you. And what this makes me think about is when I first started my business is I have to be honest, I was not very good. And I don't think anybody is very good when they first start their business. And I think that's a really important reality check, is because although we would like to say that we are incredible at whatever it is that we do for our service or whatever the product is that we offer, it's honestly very unlikely. One of my favorite ways to look at this analogy is to look at a musician or an athlete. They spend the majority of their life just to get good at a single craft. And even then are unlikely that they are going to win at whatever the competition is, especially at the Olympic level, or to be a number one artist or musician. Obviously, that's a very different market. That's a winner-take-all market, so it's much harder to be great at that. But I think oftentimes it's equally true, and no matter what your industry is that if you really want to be truly exceptional and you want people to be coming to you and knocking at your door, is that you just have to spend a lot of time getting good at it. I was not, as a website designer and marketer, very good when I first started out. When I think about the projects that I worked on at the time, I thought they were amazing. And now reflecting back at them, they're honestly horrible. And I'll be probably saying the same thing years down the road as I continue to work on my craft and get better at what I do. And so I just think that that first quote is so important for people, is just to remember that if you want that stream of clients and customers, which we all do, I think, just remember that it takes a really long time to get good at your craft to make that a reality. All right, the next one I want to talk about comes from my buddy Delphin Ward. He said, marketing is too important to be left alone to the marketing department. I love this one because it just reflects on how important marketing is no matter what your business is, and just make sure that everyone on your team is on board. A great example of this is what I think about a lot, especially for like chiropractic clinics or physical therapy clinics or anybody that has a brick and mortar or some sort of service where there's a front-facing line, is that your front desk is oftentimes your best marketing people. You could call it sales, you call it marketing, whatever you want, but like they are the people in the front facing that are working with those people. And just by them knowing what kind of conversations to have and what to think about and how to present the business, that's really, really important marketing. And if you just let all your marketing team just like create the content and try to do the full digital thing, which is great, it's something that I obviously help a lot of people with, it's like it's kind of missing a lot of other opportunities that are right in front of you in your local community and with the customers that you have, and getting referrals and partnering with people for collaborations. But my point is that if your marketing person is the only person in your business doing your marketing, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to make sure that everybody in your team is on board and helping to drive sales and helping to get more customers, because everybody has a role in that. All right, the next one comes from my buddy Billy Bosch. He said, revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. I've been having a lot of conversations lately with other businesses that got all this amazing funding and they have a bunch of investors, and then they go to business. The most recent one that comes to mind is actually Ziki. They're here in Austin. They were a food truck company that had seed oil free, a lot of strong branding. They were on billboards everywhere, and they had, I think, like 20 food trucks, and they were planning on opening in other cities and opening different branches of this, and they had all these grandiose ideas, and it was amazing. And then they went out of business, and they've been gone for a while. And it goes back to that point, is that they probably had a lot of revenue. They probably had a lot of money coming in, but they weren't profitable. And this is so true, and this is why it's so dangerous to talk about revenue numbers and how much money you're bringing in, because like if you're not in the green, if you're not profitable, are you really having a successful business? And like, obviously there's going to be some startup time, there's going to be some investment that's involved in a lot of businesses, but the quicker you can get to profit, the more important it is. And revenue, like the quote says, is purely just a vanity metric. Cool, you were able to bring in a bunch of money, but how much money did it cost you to get to that number? Versus profit, which is, I would argue, and this is my favorite way to start most businesses now, is to just understand that profit, being in the green from day one, sets you up for so much more success. Yes, it's going to take longer. Yes, it's a lot more work. But if you want to be around for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or even building a legacy business, having profit from day one makes that a lot more realistic versus having a bunch of funding and then pissing it all away like so many people do and going out of business. So remember to get in the green or stay in the green as much as humanly possible. All right, the next one came from me, but it's actually technically not my quote. I think I first heard it from actually Tim Ferriss, but the quote is, "Your degree of success is directly proportionate to the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have." I think about this one a lot, whether it is your team members, it is your customers, it is somebody that you're trying to collaborate with and negotiate a deal, is that at the end of the day, if you're willing to have that difficult and challenging conversation, that you are far more likely to continue to succeed and move to the next level in your business versus just putting it off and letting it fester and grow into this far bigger thing than it needs to be. Like, think about your own business, for example. I'd be willing to bet that there are team members that are maybe doing things that you need to talk about that you're just leaving and letting fester. I actually just had an experience with this with a new client that I started working with. We got onto a discovery call or a sales call, whatever you want to call it, and we were going back and forth about what was going to be all involved in this deal, and we were negotiating and talking about like what they wanted and what I wanted. And then eventually he was basically just like, well, how much is it? Like, just tell me the price and give me some guidelines so we even know what we're talking about here. And although price can often be uncomfortable, especially for a lot of business owners, it is the conversation that needs to have, and it is the conversation that will move things to the next level. Because if we weren't even on the same page of how much it would cost to work together, we were completely wasting our time. And I think we do this so often in our businesses, whether it's with our customers or our team members or when we're hiring or when we're firing, is just having that difficult conversation, just making sure you're on board right away. Because otherwise, we so often just beat around the bush and delay things that need to be talked about as opposed to really addressing the root issue. I think about this with partners and spouses all the time, is that are you willing to have that uncomfortable conversation about where maybe in the future the relationship is, and are you on the same page of wanting the same things? Otherwise, you're gonna have to face those issues down the road anyways. Well, it's equally true in your business, is that if you're not on the same page with your team and your customers and your vision and where you're going, well, you're in for a lot of pain somewhere down the road. And so I just love this quote, is making sure you're willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, because that's part of being a business owner, is you have those day in and day out. All right, the next one comes from Jim Donnelly. He said, "A day that I don't cry is a day that I don't feel. A day I don't feel is a wasted day." This one hit pretty deep. And it really makes me think about just the importance of emotion and really truly caring about what you're doing with your business. I've talked about this on previous episodes before, but there's this idea of the missionary versus the mercenary. The mercenary is somebody who builds a business purely for they want to make money. They're a pirate. They're trying to get their loot, which is fine. I think that there's many businesses where this should be the case. Is like, you just want to pay the bills and have a legacy and keep the lights on, and that's all wonderful. But then there's this other type of business where it's mission driven and you truly care and you're truly emotionally involved in what you're building and who you're helping and the team members that you're bringing together to make this possible. And I think it's really important that you're clear on which business it is that you're trying to build, because it has very different motives, which ultimately will obviously have very different reasons for why you make certain decisions in the business. And the reason this quote hit so hard to me is because it really made me pull back and think about what I'm ultimately building. At the moment, I've spent a lot of time building a personal brand and just becoming known for somebody that does marketing for health brands, which is great for me, but it's ultimately, what am I trying to build that's bigger and outside of myself? And it's actually got me thinking a lot more about building a brand outside of me and what I'm doing, because I want it to be more mission driven. I really want to help as many health brands as possible. And that requires me to step back a little bit from my own personal goals and ambitions and trying to make as much money as possible. Nothing wrong with wanting and desiring money, but at the same time, that doesn't really bring a lot of emotion to me either. And one of the advantages of bringing more emotion into your business that I think we so often forget about is that we are emotional creatures first and thinking creatures second. So I can logic my way all day long into why I need a business and why I need money, but if I'm not emotionally invested, it's really hard to keep myself going. There's this idea of the elephant in the rider, if you've never heard of it before, but essentially imagine the elephant as the emotion and the rider as your logical thinking brain or a person riding this elephant. Well, you can logic and think and point as the rider of this elephant all day long, but if your emotion, the elephant, isn't on board with what you want to do, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to get that elephant to go anywhere on this planet. And it's so true in our own psychology, is that if you're not emotionally invested in going a certain direction, it's unlikely that you're going there. And so the reason I brought this quote up is that I think it's really important to know which one of those businesses you're building, missionary or mercenary, and either are fine. fine. It's just being clear about that and then making decisions based on where you're trying to go with your business. All right, the next one comes from Rachel Hagg. She said, your job is not to convince anybody. Your job is to show them what's possible. And so what's beautiful about this is I brought her on to talk about sales, and this was one of the things that she mentioned in regards to sales. And I think that it's so true. I think so often that we're trying to convince the person on the call or on the other side of the table to take a certain action towards us because we want them to pay us and we want to make money, obviously. But your job isn't really to convince them. It's to show them the dream. It's to show them the outcome. And then if they so decide that that is the dream and the outcome that they want, then they'll make that decision for themselves. It's one of the reasons why it's so often said, don't sell the flight, sell the destination. It's basically when you're talking to somebody is show them what's possible with you and your business. And obviously don't lie, don't fill in fluff. Be like, yo, we can do this for you as a healthcare professional or for your business or whatever your service is or whatever your product is be like, hey, this is the thing that you can expect because we've done this with XYZ. These are the other people that have been able to accomplish this. If this is something you want, then cool, we will help you to get there. We'll help you to get to that dream, to that outcome, to that destination. But it's totally up to them at the end of the day. You really can't convince anybody of anything. And that's really not the point of sales. The point of sales is to just educate them, to teach them, to show them, yo, this is the things that we do. This is how we help people. This is the outcomes they've achieved. If that's you, great, wonderful, and awesome. I think unfortunately what most people do is they try to used car salesman them and tell them all the amazing things that this car can do and why you should buy it and why you should have it. When in reality, that's really not what you should do at all. Is you should just let them make the decision as to whether that is right or wrong for them at the end of the day. Or the next one comes from my buddy Eric Hinman again. He said, the only shortcut is surrounding yourself with people that have gotten where you want to go. I love this one so much. This is something that I harp on a lot, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for just one real quick second. If there is a life hack, just like he said in this, if there's a shortcut to getting to where you want to go, no matter what it is, a successful business, a successful relationship, a healthy body, an amazing friend group, an amazing network, whatever it is, whatever your goals or ambitions are in life, the only shortcut is environment. It's rather going to the places where the thing that you want to accomplish is easier to accomplish. Like say, for example, you want to be an actor, you should probably go to Hollywood, and getting around the people that have already accomplished or are doing the things you want to do. So if you want to be, let's say, an ultra runner, go to where a lot of ultra runners hang out and spend their time, or their run clubs, or their, I don't know, there's probably a lot of ultra runners and I guess probably mountain toms because all the ultra races are in like Montana and Utah. But I digress. My point is essentially environment. That is the shortcut. The shortcut is environment. He wrapped it up so nicely of like surrounding yourself with people that have gotten to where you want to go. It's so true. And this could be online. This could be in person. This could be health or business or relationships or whatever it is, but it truly is a shortcut. And I experienced this firsthand as somebody who moved to Austin, Texas. Living in Minnesota, it was very hard to connect with the people that I was trying to connect with. I'll be honest. Minnesota is a very cliquey place to live. I think the Midwest in general is a very cliquey place to live, is that your friend group that you kind of grew up with is just like the people you hang out with for the most of your life. It's very hard to make new connections. People are just kind of rooted in their groups. No judgment. It's just the way it is. But when I wanted to connect with other health-related business owners and entrepreneurs, Austin is really, at this moment, and it still is, the place to be in terms of, in America anyways. Obviously, there's great communities in San Francisco and Denver and Miami probably. I've actually never been there, but I think there is a great community there. But the point is whatever your ambitions are in life is to go to the places and to get around the people that are doing the things that you want to do. It is literally the life hack and the shortcut to doing those things. I know it's probably been said a million times, and I'm sure everybody's heard it, but unless you actually do it, you really, truly don't understand it. So I highly recommend it if you haven't already. All right, the next one comes from Josh Campbell. He said, get out there and just do the work and the market will give you feedback. This one I love because I have an issue of overthinking. And so I actually have a quote on my laptop here that says, less thinking, more doing, because I think we do this a lot. We try to think our way through a problem, and we're in reality, the best way to tackle any problem or any confusion or any sort of being stuck is to take action and to move towards it. I always use the analogy of it's like walking through the fog. Is like, how do you find your way through a fog? Is you just start walking forward and you figure it out as you go. And that's most decisions, especially in a business, is that kind of, I guess back to my previous point, is like you rather have a community or mentors or coaches that can help guide you, and even they aren't 100% sure. They're probably more sure than you are, but they still aren't 100% sure. Really, the best way forward then is like, yeah, have a guide, have some advice, but at the same time, you're just gonna have to walk forward and to take action. And and like he said, the market will tell you. This podcast show is actually a great example of this. This podcast show, for pretty much as long as it's been created, was called The Health Hustle. A lot of the things that I did was wrapped around that name. And to be honest, the name is a little vague. It's not super clear what I did. And when people asked me about it, or when I talked about it, they often thought it was about health. And the show is actually never really about the health side. For the most part, I really don't talk about health that often. It's something I love and I'm passionate about and I work out a lot, but is that actually something I talk a lot about on the show specifically? I actually talk more about the business side, which is clearly what we're talking about now. But that's why I renamed the show to the Health Business Builder Show, because I just felt like, based on markets and talking to people and getting feedback, that was much more clear and obvious what it is that I offer. And honestly, to be honest, since changing the name, I've seen an uptick in downloads, in terms of views and downloads and people checking out the show. And I think it's because it's just more clear and obvious of what the show is about. And so the bigger lesson in all this is that create something, build something, do something, work with a customer, take action, build your product, launch your course, whatever the thing is. And then based on the feedback you get, adjust accordingly. That is literally the best way to move forward. You will never think your way through a problem, especially if it's never been done before. And if you're building a business, I'd be willing to bet a lot of things you're doing have never been done before. And so, yeah, the moral of this, and what I'm getting at with all this, and which is why I love this quote, is that feedback is always going to be your best teacher. The challenge for most people, though, is that it doesn't feel great. It never feels good to be like, here's my thing, and then everybody hates it. Is like, but unfortunately, that is the best way forward. All right, the next one is actually in that same thread. It was by April Whitney, which was one of my most listened to and download episodes this previous year of 2024. For all these episodes, obviously, feel free to go dive deeper on all these topics and to check them out. But that one was one of the most. It was really about niche marketing for health brands and fitness brands. But she said, take imperfect action. Nothing's ever going to feel good enough. Man, is this true? Every time I do a podcast episode like this, or I write a newsletter, or I create a website or a brand strategy guide, is that it never feels good enough. I think this is so common. And if you're listening to this, I'd be willing to bet you resonate with this idea of just being a high achiever, for lack of a better word, is that you work really hard and you want to accomplish things. And I think that's amazing. But the downside of that is that as a high achiever, nothing ever feels good enough. And even just completing a project is like baseline for feeling good most days. Unfortunately, that's just true for this type of psychology. And I love to like take the extreme polar opposite to that, though, is that if you were to go to the extreme opposite of somebody that's very lethargic, doesn't really do much, doesn't really care to accomplish anything with their life, and then you have probably people listening to the show on the other side of more wanting to achieve things, I choose the side of achieving things, right? And I think that's just like, it's an important reminder of that, even though it's never going to feel good enough, no matter what it is that you do, whether the person that you help, the client that you help, the business that you built, the money that you made, the sales call that went amazing, take a moment, hopefully, to feel like, okay, this is amazing, but also remember that as a high achiever, it's never going to feel good enough. And that regardless of feeling imperfect, and I'm sure many of us have perfectionism tendencies, kind of like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a massive perfectionist, which is why he has an incredible product. Apple's, even though I own nothing by Apple, funny enough, but even though Apple's an incredible product because he's a perfectionist, it's still not going to feel good enough. And that's okay, but continue to move forward, continue to take action, no matter what it is that you're launching or putting out in the world or who you're helping. Is that, to April's point, is like imperfect action. It's never going to feel good enough. All right, the last quote that I wanted to hit on is back to Josh Campbell again. That was honestly an amazing episode. Definitely go check it out. But he said, "You're never going to get there if you don't start." Yeah, so this podcast show has been going on now for I think coming up on 4 years maybe. And I reflect back on the first episode I ever did. I was sitting actually on my parents' deck with this microphone, believe it or not, but I think I had it in my hand and it was hooked up to my laptop. And I think I put up my GoPro because I was like, yeah, I should probably get some video of this as well. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was just an intro episode that was basically like, hey, here's the health hustle, which obviously this isn't what this show is called anymore. And this is what this show is going to be about. And like just fumbled through, took me like probably an hour to record, and maybe like maybe like a 2-minute episode, I think is what it was. And it's fun for me to reflect back on how far I've come in terms of the people that I've been able to have on the show, how I structure the show, the intros and the outros, and just how far I've come from just like getting started. And that's why I love this quote, you're never going to get there if you don't start, is that my goal from starting it was obviously to grow a large audience and to continue to build my business. And I continue to do that. And it started 4 years ago, and I'm still growing and I'm still learning. And so if you're listening to this and you have a new adventure for this coming year of 2025, and there's something that you want to start, whether it is a show, a podcast, or a YouTube, or maybe it's newsletters, or maybe it's a new branch of your business, is that you're never going to get there if you don't start. But I hope this episode was helpful. Definitely go back and dive deeper into any of the previous guests of the show. I interviewed a lot of incredibly smart, incredibly brilliant people. I hope you guys have an amazing 2025 Christmas, whatever you're celebrating towards the end of this year. And I will talk to you guys, I guess, next year. See you next year. Got classic dad joke. All right. Love it. Peace. Later.